Let us invite one another in. Maybe then we can begin to fear less, to make fewer wrong assumptions, to let go of the biases and stereotypes that unnecessarily divide us. Maybe we can better embrace the ways we are the same. It's not about being perfect. It's not about where you get yourself in the end. There's power in allowing yourself to be known and heard, in owning your unique story and using your authentic voice. And there's grace in being willing to know and hear others. This, for me, is how we become.
Let's go ahead and rise in body or spirit as we sing our opening hymn.
Send down your waters, send down your waters upon this land. O healing river, send down your waters and wash the blood from off the sand. His hand is parching, this land is burning, no seed is growing in barren ground. O healing river, send down your waters, send down river, send waters down. Let seeds of freedom awake and flourish, let deep roots nourish, let tall stalks rise. O healing river, send down your waters. O healing river, from out the skies.
And would you join me in a moment of prayer? Can y'all hear me? In a moment of, up a little bit, Roman, in a moment of prayer and reflection. The great God that we know when we see love and justice and hope and kindness, whatever that thing is that holds us together and gives us hope, be with us on this day. And welcome us in these weary and excited people. Help us to hold those in this world who wish for nothing but peace and love and justice. Let us hold those in the Northeast who are weary of rain, and those closer to home who wish for nothing more than rain. Hold those internationally who are dealing with earthquakes and floods and violence and everything that is making it hard to live in this world. And help us to remember that today we can be a part of healing that world. That our birth, that your birth is a miracle, and that the world is better because you are here. Amen.
Awake and flourish, let deep roots nourish, let tall stalks rise. O healing river, send down your waters. O healing river, from out of the skies.
So welcome to the Unitarian Church of Baton Rouge. My name is Nathan. I'm one of your ministers. I am very pleased to welcome you back. It's my second Sunday back. For those who are new, I was on sabbatical. I'm not that new. But online people, we are glad that you are here also. Apparently people from all over the country, like not every city in the country, but people from places that are not Baton Rouge or Louisiana are watching. So glad you were with us. And today the person who is monitoring the chat on YouTube, sorry, in-person people, but she made an appearance at our church. So she's in the office. So if you wanted to go see her, you can. The only real announcements we have is yesterday we had a welcome back party for you, not for me, for you. And a lot of you were here, and a lot of people did good work. And who helped make that happen? Could you raise your hands in house? All right. So they're all. A lot more are probably still sleeping in and coming to the later service. But that was the launch of our stewardship drive, which we're not going to talk about until October, but it's We Shall Be Known. So that was your sneak peek of it. And what you should know is between the services, we have middle hour. We have an Intro to UU class, which is in room 6. Good, because I have the sheet, but I left it in my office. We also have open discussion in room 1, and the social justice team meeting is in room 7, correct? That's the blood drive is not in room 7. The blood drive, I promise, is not in room 7. Social justice team is in room 7. So if you would like to go to learn more about Unitarian, if you would like to talk, go to room 1, which is this room right as close to us. If you would like to learn more about Unitarian Universalism, go to room 6, which is further back. If you want to go to the social justice team, go to room 7, which is the furthest back one. And if you would like to give blood, because we are the most outstanding Unitarian church in the entire city for giving blood, you can go right out here. Do not go into any of these rooms trying to give your blood. Go to the giant machine outside to do that. Online people, actually, if you give blood and tell whoever takes your blood, hopefully medical, that you are affiliated with the church, we will get credit. So you can do that as well. And now for a transition into the stones, let me do this. See, now there's like a visual transition. We actually have a lot today. First, we announced it last week that husband of church member Don Patterson died after a long battle with ALS. He was cremated on Wednesday, and we are going to have his service here October 7th at 4 p.m. We also had 2 people request prayers. So those are Eileen Hendricks and Lois Elisar requested prayers for her great-grandson, Jacob Smiley, who's going to have, he's about 6 months old, heart surgery this week. So we will announce next week how it went. We'll have a card. Also, we have Bruce Blaney and Noah Shaw have both asked that you know that they are in the hospital. Can I announce Nicole Anderson is recovering from surgery. We're going to have a card for her. And we also are having a Thinking of You card for Sam McCord. And if you would place a stone, a former church member, Susan Batts, died after a long battle with dementia. She was being caretaken by someone I knew in college because she grew up in this church. So we're thinking of her today. This ritual we have is open to everybody, visitor and member alike. We invite those who wish to come forward either along the west or the east wall. Take a stone, place it in the chalice bowl. Online, type in what is in your heart right into the chat. I now invite those who wish to come forward as we place stones. And we say together, with hope to make this a better world, we light this flame. Its light is the symbol of the power of love.
From all that dwell below the skies, let songs of hope and faith arise. Let peace, goodwill on earth be sung, through every land, by every tongue.
Today, our service is being offered by, how long have you been a member of the church, Cynthia? Since 2000? 19-year member, Dr. Cynthia, what's your middle name? Dr. Cynthia Linnell Downing Bryant. What we did, because I would be gone for so long, and Reverend Chris said he didn't want to preach for 4 months in a row, is I don't want to preach for 1 month in a row. So we recruited some, mostly Worship Guild board members, things like that, some leaders in the church, and we said, would you go through this process to discern what your message might be? And we said, pick a story that you've always struggled with. You don't have to use that in the service, but most, I think, have. Anyway, so we are about to hear a message from our own former member of the search committee that I tricked into letting me be your senior minister, member of the Worship Guild, member of the board, member of the Black Joy Collective. What else am I missing? Gospel choir, blues choir, and adult faith development. All right. Anyway, did we do this with all of them? Just list all of the things? Okay. So we're not going to do that. YouTube people, we're going to delete this later so you won't see it. Anyway, let's go ahead and rise in body or spirit. Let's sing our next hymn.
Earth was given as a garden, cradle for humanity, tree of life and tree of knowledge, place for our discovery. Here was home for all your creatures, born of land and sky and sea, all created in your image, all to live in harmony. Show to us again the garden where all life flows fresh and free. Gently guide us, all your children, into full maturity. Teach us how to trust each other, how to use for good our power, how to touch the earth with reverence. Then once more we'll eat and flower. Bless the earth and all your children, one creation, make us whole, interwoven, all connected, planet-wide, inmost soul. Holy Mother, life bestowing, bid our waste and warm seas fill us all with grace o'erflowing.
from If Women Rose Rooted by Sharon Blackie. For many native tribes throughout America, Grandmother Spider continually spins the world into being. For the Andean peoples of South America, Pachamama is the world mother. She sustains all life on earth. In some Celtic nations, Danu gave birth to all the other gods and was mother to the people who followed. Women, the creators of life, the bearers of the cup of knowledge and wisdom, personifying the moral and spiritual authority of the fertile green and blue earth. Do you remember those days? Me neither. We Western women lost control of our stories a long time ago. The story which I was given to carry as a young child, the story which both defined me and instructed me about the place I occupied in this world, accorded no such significance to women. In this story, the first woman was the cause of all humanity's suffering. She brought death to the world, not life. Wanting the knowledge and wisdom which had been denied her, she dared to eat the fruit of a tree. Even worse, she shared the fruit of knowledge and wisdom with her man. So God cast her and her male companion out of paradise and deemed that women should be subordinate to men forever after. The stories we tell about the creation of the earth and the origins of humankind show us how our culture views the world, our place in it. The key consequence of this particular creation myth is a belief prevalent now for centuries in the West that women are naturally disobedient temptresses who must firmly be kept in their place.
Yes, I believe it. This is for Anne Mariah, Mary Eliza, Patty, Daisy, Sadie, Patsy, Elnora, Jessie, Gracie May, and me. Sister Downing in the Word. When I was a child, I did not attend church. I was born and raised in the far American West in a bustling, vibrant, and very Black community. Painstakingly developed by expats from Louisiana, Mississippi, Texas, and other states as far east as North Carolina during the first and second waves of the Great Migration. These were Southern Black women and men who dreamed of better lives elsewhere, but brought the best of the South with them. Music, foodways, and religious ways traveled west as well. And there were Black churches everywhere: Baptist, Catholic, Methodist, African Methodist Episcopal, Church of God in Christ, Church of Christ, and every non-denominational Black religious configuration that one can imagine. Many of my classmates went to church every Sunday the Lord sent, but I, unchurched child that I was, spent my Sunday mornings sleeping late and waking up to search for good television shows on the 4, count them 4, channels available to Generation X youth. Some Monday mornings, my classmates reminisced about church picnics, church dresses, church candy, church folk. I was often intrigued. They had access to a world that I did not, and for the longest time, I assumed that I knew nothing of God. But I remained curious. When I came across my mother's old tattered Black red-lettered Bible, I took matters into my own hands and I decided to read it. I can still see the red-worded pages near the book's end, Revelation. I had heard of this before. My friends told me that the revelations scared them. Though I had no idea what they meant, and I'm not sure that they did either, I was scared too, but not too scared to peek anyway. Reading felt like I was looking at something secret and forbidden, and I wondered if something was going to happen to my fingertips and eyeballs if I looked too long. Eventually, after about 4 or 5 tries, I put the good book down because it just didn't make sense. Over the course of my childhood, I remained intrigued by the idea of God, not so much Jesus, just God. Jesus came later. Unfortunately, my memory of the discussions about God and the Bible with adults just rarely ended well for me. For example, I remember visiting my grandmother's family in Mississippi. Cousins whom I had just met took me to Wednesday night Bible study. Y'all know about that? Oh, okay. There were only about 7 of us in the group, so I could not hide when the minister questioned us. He asked, "What do you think heaven is?" And one cousin said, quite softly, "It's a holy place." Someone else said something about angels and white robes, golden streets and golden sheets. I answered as best I could from my 10-year-old heart and mind. I said, I think that there will be lots of Ferris wheels, roller coasters, and cotton candy, all the cotton candy you can eat. Wrong answer. After my cousin stopped laughing, the minister stared at me for a moment and then curtly explained, for the good of my young unsaved soul, I'm sure, there'll be all the roller coasters and cotton candy you want in hell. And with that, I was silenced for the rest of the evening. That same year, my father and his wife had friends over, and they were all heavily engaged in a discussion about women. I was interested because, though I did not fully understand what they were talking about, it was clear to me that women weren't faring well. Growing up, I lived with my mother, and I also spent the good part of every week at my grandmother's house. My mother was pregnant with my only sibling, a girl. At that point in my life, I had only had women teachers. And further, as some of you probably already know from my other reflections up here in this sacred space, I fully intended to grow up and allow Wonder Woman to just let it go already and let me take over. In other words, my personal space, my personal universe was created, nurtured, and maintained by women. To me, women were how the world worked. So being the inquisitive child that I have always been, I asked the question, aren't there any good women in the world? What about Eve from the Bible? She must have been good, right? Now, I have no idea where that came from, but my boldly exclaimed application of the little biblical knowledge I possessed felt really good. Oh, what a sweet, naive girl I was. I can still hear their hearty laughter as they commenced to school me on the evils of Eve. In summary, they told me that Eve had started it all. She was the origin of deception, confusion, and chaos. Eve had caused the fall, and the world has been messed up ever since. They spoke with a mixture of humor and shock, wondering, I'm sure, how did I not know what everybody else knows? Suffice it to say, despite never having been formally taught, trained by any church doctrines, when I left home at 17, I had learned some things about God and the Bible. Number 1, Jesus was the only Son of God. Number 2, God was a He who stays in heaven, but is also somehow everywhere, sees all, and his ways are not ways that we can understand. 3, the devil, Satan, and Lucifer were all the same being that lives in hell, but apparently roams the earth freely at will, causing all manner of mischief. And number 4, the woman, the first woman and man on earth were Adam and Eve. And Eve, well, see, Eve had caused some problems.
I don't know how to transition from that into the office. So, with that, I know what I'll do. See, it's important this church exists, which we'll find out later. So I will ask you to give generously now so you can find out later why it was important that you have had given. Also, we're going to split the service right down the middle with the Gardeer Initiative. Oh, look at that, Roman, right on the snap. This is an organization that we've been working with through the social justice team that's been doing great work in the community. I got the numbers back from the last 2 months of shared offerings. I don't know if this last one or it's the 2 months before because I was on sabbatical. But y'all gave more than $1,000 to each of those organizations. So please, please keep up the good work. I ask you, and online people, there's like 30 ways to give. Those in person who would like to give as if you were online, go to the website, there's like 30 ways to give. Those who like the traditional put a thing in a thing, the things are going to come down. I'll ask you now to give very generously as this morning's offering is gratefully given and received.
Reading from Genesis 3, 1 through 7. The fall. Now the serpent was more crafty than any other beast of the field the Lord God had made. He said to the woman, "Did God actually say you shall not eat of any tree in the garden?" And the woman said to the serpent, "We may eat of the fruit of the trees in the garden. But God said, you shall not eat of the fruit of the tree that is in the midst of the garden, neither shall you touch it, lest you die." But the serpent said to the woman, "You surely will not die, for God knows that when you eat of it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil." So when the woman saw the tree was good for food, and that it was a delight to the eyes, and that the tree was to be desired to make one wise, she took of its fruit and ate. She also gave some to her husband who was with her, and he ate. Then the eyes of both were opened, and they knew that they were naked, and they sewed fig leaves together and made themselves loincloths.
When Reverend Nathan asked what is now dubbed the Preacher Pack to select a Bible story that troubled us and create a sermon around it, I decided that every story in the Bible, whether beautiful, inspirational, or troubling, has the same origin story, Genesis. So I chose to begin at the beginning. I selected the story of the infamous tree of knowledge of good and evil. Later, I learned that it was not the tree that troubled me, it was Eve. Even now, when I read Genesis, I'm still perplexed by the idea of God, the idea that God, the omniscient, omnipotent, and omnipotent Almighty, would create the moon, the sun, the seas, the rocks, the flora, and the fauna, and all other things seen and unseen, but somehow did not know what would happen in the lives of his two highest beings created in his own image. Initially, God told them to be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth, subdue it, have dominion over every animal in the sky or moving on the earth, and to have every plant yielding seed and every tree with seed in its fruit for food. Later, God issues a warning about eating from a conspicuously placed tree in the middle of a divinely lush and ever bountiful garden, because it would surely bring them death. Why wouldn't God, who knows all, created all, and is all powerful, why didn't God place this tree on a high mountaintop somewhere, way down the Tigris River, in the middle of a muddy banked oxbow lake formed by the river Euphrates? No. This lovely but deadly tree stood conspicuously in the middle of the Garden of Eden, next to the tree of life. Does this not trouble any of you? Is there such a thing as a divine mistake? Can we entertain the thought that God did not know what Adam and Eve would do before they did it? You know, honestly, it feels a little bit blasphemous to even consider this up here right now. I'm kidding. As I worked through this sermon, I decided that while the tree is significant to the plot, it is only important because of the presence of Eve. Further, my larger concern is the multiple centuries of focus on the fall of the first parents and their removal from paradise as a consequence of their supposed disobedience, rather than some serious consideration taken regarding why the opportunity to fall and be banished was present in the garden in the first place. There are other questions as well. Some say that the selection of Eve, rather than Adam by the serpent, is evidence of her naturally weak nature and her poor discernment abilities. Well, I don't see that, but I do wonder why the serpent is talking at all. I mean, how often do animals talk in Bible stories? I know that there's something about a talking donkey in the Old Testament, but even there, God makes clear that the donkey is talking for a reason and made it happen. So since only Eve, Adam, and the rest of God's creations reside in the garden, and there is no mention of Satan at all, it seems more plausible to assume that if the serpent is talking, God meant for the serpent to be talking. And if the serpent selected Eve, that too must be by design. Some of these questions I have asked for years, and I cannot get an answer that satisfies me. Either God is in control, which is a phrase I hear at least 5 times a year, or God is not. Consider again Sharon Blackie on Eve. The story of Eve is the underpinning for countless measures which have limited the actions, rights, and status of women. No matter what women might achieve in this world, the fundamental message of the sacred texts of the world's largest religious grouping, which for 2,000 years have supplied the foundational beliefs of our Western culture, is that men should not trust women. And more importantly, and I have this italicized, if I was writing this, I'd say italics mine, and that women should trust neither themselves nor each other. Let that sit for a second. That women should not trust themselves nor each other. Consider the depth of that. I mean, if women can't trust themselves, who can they trust? No, thank you. Because Christianity has been the handmaiden of conquerors and colonizers that, as another of my favorite poets, Sterling Brown, said, taught us the religion that they disgraced. I know better than to apply any westernized ancient ideas to my life without some critical thought, and often some self-loving re-thought. So to make this make sense, I have to view this origin story of the original woman through the lens of womanhood, not the lens that has been presented and taught to the multitudes, but as I have known womanhood to be. On the 6th day, God created Eve, mother of all, who made possible Adam's full awakening and the continuance of human life. Since no other creation in the garden was suitable for Adam to share the responsibility of stewarding the earth, God made one last dazzling being, the final one in the hierarchy of creation, a woman who was curious. She was friendly. She was talking to serpents. and she desired wisdom. Perhaps this was the divine plan all along, and Adam, though certainly possessing his own gifts, not trying to take anything away from Adam, required to use the terminology provided within the text, a helpmeet or a helper, depending on which version you read of the Bible. Perhaps through her desire to be wise, she helped Adam meet a need that he didn't even know he had. Eve in Hebrew is commonly believed to mean living one, source of life, to live. I say that Eve brought Adam and eventually all of us to life. And as grandly and reimagined as this may sound to some of you, sometimes to myself, for me, it provides a much more affirming understanding of Eve that is in line with the women that I have known and that I strive to be.
All right, so let's rise for our next hymn.
Life is the greatest gift of all the riches on this earth. Life and its creatures, great and small, of high and lowly birth. So treasure it and measure it with beads of shining worth. Mind is the brightest gift of all, its thought no Harry or Mars. It seeks creation's hidden plan, its quest surmounts all bars. It reigns the world, it chains the storm, it weighs the outmost stars. We are the life, its shining gift, the measure of all things. Up from the dust our temples lift, our vision soars on wings. For seed and root, for flower and fruit, our grateful spirit sings.
Good morning. I am a black woman. The music of my song, Some Sweet Arpeggio of Tears, is written in a minor key, and I can be heard humming in the night. Can be heard humming in the night. I saw my mate leap screaming to the sea, and I, with these hands, cupped the life breath from my issue in the cane brake. I lost Nat's swinging body in a rain of tears and heard my son scream all the way from Anzio for peace he never knew. I learned Da Nang and Porktop Hill in anguish. Now my nostrils know the gas, and these trigger-tired fingers seek the softness in my warrior's beard. I am a black woman, tall as cypress, strong beyond all definition, still defying place and time and circumstance, assailed, impervious, indestructible. Look on me and be renewed.
Thank you, Nicole. Y'all give it up for Nicole because She did that. Mari Evans' poem, I Am a Black Woman, is my favorite poem in existence. Written during the Black Arts Movement, the sister movement to Black Power, it laments the significant sacrifices of Black men historically, but boldly foregrounds the strength, courage, and tenacity it has taken to be a Black woman during the Middle Passage, American slavery, multiple international wars, and domestic fights for civil rights during the 60s and early 70s. But for me, the poem offers more. It offers us more. A Black woman standing tall, impervious, and indestructible, welcoming anyone in need of inspiration during hard times to cast their gaze and consideration upon her unyielding endurance. It moves me every time. In Mari's poem is an instructive image of women, the source of life, Mother Eve's daughters, defying place and time and circumstance. And defiance remains necessary because the stakes remain high. There are too many stories of girls and women around the world whose freedoms and very lives are perpetually in jeopardy of being plucked away on a whim. Those of us who are interested watch in horror as we learn of barred educational access, sexual violence, extreme poverty, too young and too often forced marriages, and other forms of condoned organized violence against the world's women. I have often lamented these atrocities with other caring souls who share my sorrow, but my anger continues to rise because so many of these cases feel too familiar. When I have listened to the stories relayed by my foremothers, I see similar threads of tyranny. Women who narrowly escaped violent marriages or loveless, convenient ones by fleeing to new lovers or new states. Women who, despite supposed compulsory education, were made to leave school in the 3rd grade because, see, that damn cotton wasn't gonna pick itself. Women who raised children both with and without partners in overcrowded northern tenements or tiny southern cottages, I say shacks, that still have the haunted memories of enslaved ancestors, or houses in the far American West that sit in colorful neighborhoods that subtly, but suddenly shifted from spaces of promising Black progress to strategically redistributed sites of gentrification and non-voluntary Black flight. Nevertheless, yet, and somehow, the grandmothers that I know, and all of my great-grannies whose names I will never know, they kept pushing, they kept reaching, and they kept rising. And as a result, I am here.
So let's rise for this next hymn, written by a Unitarian Universalist, by the way.
For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings. We are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are mothers of courage and fathers of time. We are daughters of dust and the sons of great visions. We're sisters of mercy and brothers of love. We are lovers of life and the builders of nations, seekers of truth and keepers of faith. We are makers of peace just as we are, the Spirit of God. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are.
Got my glasses this time. Myths, Joseph Campbell tells us, or told us, are not about the meaning of life, but the experience of life. I believe this means that there will always be instructive stories and myths that speak to our spirits. Some we will keep, others we will not, and some it's time to change. The lesson of the tree of knowledge could merely be that rules matter. Breaking them may or may not bring us immediate satisfaction, and consequences are inevitable. I can accept this as a fundamental truth, but I contend that any rule that is created for the purpose of controlling the human spirit, for controlling me, and for controlling all of our access to a full and loving life, that's a rule that will always be broken. Ultimately, having knowledge of good and evil means that we all have a choice. We can stay or we can go. We can help or we can hinder. We can hate or we can love. We're not all good, but we're not all bad either. We are both. Eve and Adam took the fruit of wisdom with them, within them. So good and evil resides in here, not out there. We have to choose well as often as we can. And like Mother Sister Maya taught us, when we know better, we got to do better. Reimagining the old and crafting new stories of empowerment is hard soul work. It's hard soul work. But it is necessary to counter these old negative narratives that victimize everyone in some way and allow all the isms that prevent well-lived lives. Enough of that, I say. I say turn towards the mother, turn towards Eve, the hero of humanity's origin story. And through her example, through her reaching, she continues to call all of us to get a life. And so what if there's a cost? Do it anyway. Do what the Spirit says do.
Let's sing.
You got to do when the Spirit says do. You got to do when the Spirit says do. When the Spirit says do, you got to do, oh Lord. You got to do when the Spirit says do. When the Spirit singers that sing. You got to sing when the Spirit says sing. When the Spirit says sing, you got to sing, oh Lord. You got to sing when the Spirit says sing. You got to laugh when the Spirit says laugh. You got to laugh when the Spirit says laugh. When the Spirit says laugh, you got to laugh, oh Lord. You got to laugh when the Spirit says laugh. You got to shout when the Spirit says shout. You got to shout when the Spirit says shout. When the Spirit says shout, you got to shout, oh Lord. You got to shout when the Spirit says shout. You got to do it. To shout when the Spirit says shout. When the Spirit says shout, you got to shout, oh Lord. You got to shout when the Spirit says shout. You got to do when the Spirit says do. You got to do when the Spirit says do. the Spirit says do, you got to do, oh Lord. You got to do when the Spirit says do.
If the concept of God has any validity or use, it can only be to make us larger, freer, and more loving. So says James Baldwin. Now all of you, go in peace and do better.